Hello and thank you for tuning in again. Jim with Upper Tampa Bay Paddle Sports here. Today we're going to cover the topic of fixed length paddles. Here we have an adjustable, I should say a fixed length carbon fiber paddle. If you've used the adjustables, they're rather easy to adjust. You use them, each time you use them, you adjust to the length that you need. Why would you need different lengths? Well, I'm going to give you an example. Here, I have an all carbon Three Brothers fixed length paddle, and it is cut to a race length. You'll see that I'm fully extended all the way to the top of the paddle. Next up, we have an all-around paddle, which is cut a couple inches shorter. Essentially, I'm fully extended, but not all the way to the end of my wrist. Essentially, this is a comfortable all-around length for recreational paddling. Here, we have a paddle that's cut to surf length, significantly shorter. As you can see, a good 6 or 8 inches shorter than the race length paddle. And the reason for this, when you're surfing, typically you'll be squatted down, you'll be much closer to the water, you'll have a lower center of gravity. A long paddle like this is going to be cumbersome. You're not going to be able to get it in, catch to be able to drop into that wave. You're going to lose a little bit of momentum. It's going to be cumbersome. So typically, when you have fixed length paddles, depending what you're doing, you typically would adjust it to the conditions. Here you see we have quite a few because we paddle in all sorts of conditions. So we're going to go ahead today, we're going to cover the carbon paddle itself, how to cut it, how to glue it, how to use it. Stay tuned. Okay, so once you've determined the length that you want your paddle to be, there's a couple things you want to take in consideration. This is the paddle handle itself. You notice that there's a good portion of it that will remain inside the paddle shaft, and this is the handle which will extend out. So we're going to want to factor in this distance to the total length of the paddle. In other words, when we cut the paddle shaft, we're going to want to subtract this distance from the overall length of the shaft in order to provide the total length of the paddle. So with that being said, the paddle that you see here on the deck of the board is essentially the length that I want this paddle cut to. So I'm going to go ahead and subtract that distance, and I'm going to mark it with tape. I'm going to essentially wrap the shaft of the paddle in the tape, and then I will cut through the center of the tape using a hacksaw. And the reason that we do that, carbon fiber could have a tendency to splinter when cutting it with a hacksaw. So we want to make sure that we do it in a very slow and controlled fashion, and we cut through the center of the tape. So when marking, make sure that you don't mark to the top or the bottom of the tape. You're going to want to be marking and cutting through the center of the tape. So now you can see that essentially I have factored in the length of the paddle handle that will remain out of the shaft. I've marked the shaft of the fixed length paddle we're going to be cutting. So now we're going to go ahead. I do recommend using a hacksaw with a new blade, something nice that will cut through. Something that's dull, you might have a tendency to work a little bit too difficult, first of all, and second of all, you could have a tendency to cause it to fray. Hopefully with the tape that won't happen. So let's go ahead and cut this, and we'll be right back. Okay, now that we've made our cut, we're going to go ahead. We'll discard the piece that was cut off. Go ahead and remove the tape from the paddle shaft. At this point, we're going to want to take a little bit of sandpaper and just clean up around the edge of the cut, as well as scuff up the inside of the paddle shaft and the section that's going to be glued on the inside so that we get good adhesion. So let's go ahead and do that. Now that we've gone ahead and scuffed up the paddle handle itself, as well as the paddle shaft, we're going to apply a little bit of super glue to the handle. We're going to want to make sure that we insert it so that it is straight, and then we're going to go ahead and tape this in place, and we're going to flip the paddle so that it is upside down and leave it resting against the floor overnight so that we get good adhesion. So now that we've applied the adhesive and we have taped the handle in place so that it cannot move, we are going to go ahead and set this up to sit overnight upside down, being careful not to move the handle so that it can dry. So there you have it. That is how to measure, cut and attach a handle on a fixed length paddle. Adjustable paddles are something that people typically use when they're first getting into the sport, but once you get a little bit more serious about it and you get a better board, you're going to want to have a better handle that's more suited to the exact purpose of that time. Thank you for tuning in. Hope to see you next time. Keep your paddles wet.